Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our discussion on the transformative power of MarTech 2024 trends. Really excited about today's webinar and the two panelists who are joining me. Let me start us out with some introductions. I'll start with myself. My name is Phil Hollrah. I'm the Vice President of Product Marketing at Tealium. I've really spent my career in the ad tech, MarTech, and data space, and I'm proud to be moderating today's session. So let me quickly introduce the main panel experts that are joining me. I'll start with Juan Mendoza. He's the CEO of the MarTech Weekly. Juan, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Phil, and I'm so excited to be here for this Tealium webinar. Fun fact, Tealium was the first CDP I've ever learned. And I still remember being in the classroom. Tealium do some fantastic training sessions and get you really into product. And I remember going from basically zero, no knowledge about CDPs, to having a very good understanding of what they do in a space of 2 days. And so, yeah, it's very special for me to be here and to be having a really great discussion around trends and where the marketing tech industry is going. A little bit about myself. So I'm the CEO and the founder of the MarTech Weekly. The business is literally in the name. We give a weekly snapshot of everything that's happening in the marketing technology industries. More than 14,000 apps now in the marketplace. Some analyst firms peg the value of the industry at around $500 billion, $500 billion. So it's big, it's growing. Last year, more than 3,000 apps were added to the marketing technology landscape. So our job is to really contextualize, simplify for leaders in particular, all the major changes that are happening across the industry, where innovation is going, where regulation is going, where the various trends and insights in the space is going as well. So that's the core of our business. We do media, and it's supported by our what we call TMW Pro members, which are our paid subscribers. But we also run a variety of other programs in the industry. One other program we have is called the TMW 100, which ranks from the first place to 100th place, the most innovative marketing tech companies. It was great to see Tealium in that program as well last year for our inaugural event. And lastly is the MarTech World Forum, which is 3 events that we're running in Melbourne, San Francisco, and London this year, gathering leaders in the marketing technology domain to really flesh out and discuss where this amazing industry is going. So that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Juan, and thanks for joining us today. Our next panelist is Arpit Choudhury. He's the founder and operator at databeats. So Arpit, please, share a little bit about yourself with us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Really excited to be here. So I don't have a background in data. I spent most of my early career in product marketing and growth. But when I started working with data at scale at one of the SaaS companies I was working at, I realized that data is so fundamental and so important for folks like me. And it's really important to understand the ins and outs of data. And that's when I started, creating content about data. Writing has always been a big part of my work. So my goal was to create accessible content that enables folks working in non-data roles or data adjacent roles, like I like to refer to these roles like product marketing growth, to learn more about data, and that's how I started my first side project called Data Led Academy. And then I ended up, selling it to Amplitude. I worked with many other companies in the data space. Today, I'm essentially building databeats, and I describe databeats as the final destination for honest, accessible data content tailored for growth practitioners and business leaders. So the goal is to create honest content, which is purely educational in nature, vendor neutral, and accessible, so that anyone, irrespective of their background, can spend time and learn this stuff. So yeah, that's what I spend most of my days doing. I'm also writing my first book. It's called Good Data to Growth. I'm nearing the end of it, and I'm really excited to put it out there. And people can actually check it out. It's available as a work in progress book. So yeah, that's just a little bit about me.
Excellent. Well, welcome and thanks for joining us today as well, Arpit. So for our discussion today, we have a few areas of focus, and I'd like to start with a few findings from Tealium's 5th annual State of the CDP report that was recently published. And this is our annual report. It's really comprised of a global survey of 1,200 IT, operations, marketing, data professionals, and it really provides a comprehensive overview of the evolving landscape and trends that are shaping our category, how companies are thinking about and using data, how that data powers some of the other technologies that are being used as well. And there's really a lot of overlap in these findings and marketing technology trends that are shaping 2024 and beyond. And then from there, Juan, Arpit, and myself will dig a little bit deeper into some of these trends, provide our perspective and how they're impacting what we do with data and the technology we use to drive business results. So let me start with a few of the findings from the State of the CDP, and that'll drive our conversation. So give me a second. I'm going to switch over and share some visuals with you here. All right. So one of the first trends that we saw this year with the State of the CDP report is that creating relevant customer experiences is just as important as ever, and really having the right data and the right technologies to derive insights and take the right action is critical. So one of the first findings that we saw was hearing that companies with a CDP were more satisfied with their ability to create relevant customer experiences, through their own customer data, and we saw that at 91% of those with a CDP responding that way, versus those without a CDP at only 64%. And then, kind of building on that, we also learned that organizations have realized that first-party real-time data is really instrumental in delivering, dynamic personalization, maintaining cross-channel consistency, optimizing campaigns, ensuring compliance, and it really enables businesses to orchestrate customer journeys and engage their customer, based on events, and creating those unified customer profiles for that holistic understanding of their different audiences. And survey respondents demonstrated that's super important, with 80% of CDP adopters responding that first party real-time data is critical for them to meet their business objectives. And what you're seeing here, that first chart, the 0 to 1 year, to 1 to 3 years, the 4+ years, we segmented the different respondents by how long their companies have been using a CDP, just to see a little nuance in the data and maturity, and what that led to different results as well. I think the other additional point here is that 84% of these organizations stated that CDPs are providing them with the ability to take advantage of real-time data for analysis, decision making, and execution and activation across their tech stack. I think the other thing is, we've all been, reading and hearing a lot about the death of the third-party cookie, with, Google slated to end third-party cookies in Chrome and at some point this year. And, with companies, starting to prepare, and as I mentioned the last slide, more companies are focusing on how important first-party data is, and, businesses are leveraging CDPs and other technologies to help prepare for that loss of the third-party cookie. And we see where 85% of CDP users are stating that, hey, we're somewhat prepared or very prepared for this loss, compared to only 62% of companies without a CDP. So they're starting to put those data strategies in place today. And then with a larger focus on data and all the different analytics and MarTech tools, Juan was just talking about the thousands and thousands that are out there, that we're using, through multiple channels. Things like privacy and consent and compliance are more important than ever. And, we saw that 91% of, CDP users feel, confident that they're able to comply with current, privacy regulations. We're also seeing that 91% of CD users feel more prepared to adapt to future privacy regulations as well, versus those that don't. And those that don't responded, at only 57%, and that's down 10 points from last year. So there's a pretty big gap in terms of how people are feeling about privacy and their compliance with it. And then finally, last slide before we jump into a bigger conversation is, one category that we all can't stop talking and hearing about is AI. And generative AI has certainly changed how we do things, and companies are building AI functionality into their products. Companies are starting to realize that the quality of their data is the real advantage. And, we see that, 91% of companies using a CDP feel like, hey, those are critical in providing the right data, available for their AI and machine learning projects. This clean, consented, trusted data, and is, having quality data that is maintained, as well as collecting and organizing new data into the future. So I wanted to start with just some of those findings and topic areas to build off of as we jump into our discussion. So let's bring Juan and Arpit back in, and let's dig a little bit deeper into all of this. So Juan and Arpit, shared some findings here on how people are using, CDPs to keep up with market trends like AI, machine learning, third-party cookie deprecation, data privacy. But let's extend on that. Can you both talk a little bit about the future of MarTech, and how that's going to be shaped this year, and maybe some of your biggest predictions or trends for 2024 and the like. So Juan, we'll start with you. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to say something just to get us into the mood for this trends discussion, which is, I think we're careening into a hot mess. I think right now, data and how it's being used within business. You mentioned third-party cookie deprecation. The galaxy of replacements for third-party cookie technology is mind-blowing. There's dozens and dozens of them now across the world. But beyond that, you've got regulators, you've got big tech soloing off their access to their data. I would say that we're in a very chaotic, very messy period compared to, say, the past 10 years of online advertising, digital marketing. We are probably in the precipice of a lot of change, and that brings a lot of opportunity in the marketplace. It means that a lot of startups can raise up and build new solutions, but it also means that there's going to be a lot of pain. So I just wanted to open this up and give us a view to say, well, if a marketer, if you're listening to this or watching it, I would sort of say I feel you, because looking at some of the stats, according to an Adobe report last year, they're saying between 70 and 80% of marketers are still reliant on third-party cookies. It's a massive number of brands that still are very much reliant on cookies. And that tells me, you see third-party cookie deprecation happening now. Google's I think they've deprecated about 30 million browsers of third-party cookies. And, Chrome is the big one that majority of third-party cookie technology relies on, just around the advertising ecosystem. So if you've got 80% of marketers still relying on third-party cookies, and then you have, say, Google Chrome looking to get rid of third-party cookies, what happens next? And everyone's thinking and assuming this year that cookie deprecation is actually going to happen, that we're going to get to 100%, not just 1%, but 100%. But I would actually say that may not be the case. If you look over just the past few weeks, so the IAB Tech Council have come back and they said that the Privacy Sandbox, which is Google's solution for third-party cookies and what they do next across, advertising identifiers, data sharing, everything you kind of need to do a lot of that targeted advertising. The Privacy Sandbox is just nowhere near. It's years away from being even at just feature parity with what we have with third-party cookie technology. But it's not only that. The UK Competitions Market Authority, they've just said that Google cannot deprecate third-party cookies until they meet literally dozens of regulatory guidelines to ensure that Google is not working in an anti-competitive way. So, okay, are third-party cookies going to be deprecating? Maybe. It's still a huge maybe. And there's a reason why. And I saw Tealium talk about this 3 years ago, where Google announced third-party cookie deprecation. And Tealium was one of the first in the market to talk about, hey, first-party data is the future here. But Google's kicked the can down the road, and now it's kicking the can down again. And now you have regulators saying you cannot actually do this. So that's what I'm saying, is it's a very chaotic, very messy time. There's going to be a big turf war for what those big online identifiers will be. So I would say that, just in the context of data, not any other category, that's probably one of the biggest things I'm looking at this year is third-party cookie deprecation, customer identity, and I think the unique opportunities of a chaotic market, which is still trying to find some stability once third-party cookies go away. But I'm curious to hear what Arpit has to say about that.
Yeah, Arpit, you're next. What do you think about trends and predictions and some of the things that Juan just talked about?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much agree with everything Juan said. He knows way more about what's happening in the third-party cookie world than I do. So I don't really have anything much to add to what Juan said, but in terms of where I see, from my perspective and the work I do, where I see MarTech going. So I had this conversation a year and a half ago with Scott Brinker. He was on my podcast, and the episode was called "How MarTech is Becoming Data First." So this is even before November of 2022, I think, when Gen AI became this thing. So we discussed how data is becoming more and more important for organizations that want to leverage MarTech solutions better, that want to enable their marketing and growth teams to do more with data in their day-to-day. And then Gen AI happened, right? So what's essentially happening is that data quality is becoming a really, really important thing. Even if you talk about cookie deprecation and companies having to focus on first-party data, it's all about collecting quality data, good quality data, and also maintaining it and now putting it to use. So what I see, my prediction, and even though I'm not big on predictions, would be that talking about data quality is becoming easier. Even a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, when we talk about data quality, not many people would be interested, or a lot of folks would be like, oh, it's a problem for large companies. But today, data quality is something fundamental that companies of all sizes have to care about, especially if they're serious about, driving growth using data, right? So yeah, I mean, that would be my main area of focus, and that would be my recommendation for companies that are trying to sort of battle these messy times. That things are messy and things will remain messy for at least coming couple of years, I guess, maybe more. But data quality is something that you can start working on sooner rather than later. Just have to invest in better processes. You have to enable your teams to understand how data is collected, how it is stored, how it's moved around between systems, how it's activated, and people need to really sort of be involved in all of the entire process of data being made available across all of these MarTech solutions. Every company is using dozens and dozens of tools, and it's so important to make sure that data in all of those tools is accurate, is timely, is relevant, is complete. There are all of these data quality dimensions, and unless there's a serious focus on this and strong processes and even tools in place, fixing data quality issues will always be a challenge. In fact, identifying data quality issues is also a huge challenge. A lot of companies, a lot of marketers work with data, and they set up activation campaigns, whether email campaigns and ad campaigns. They may not even realize that the data that they're using is actually poor quality data, right? And they realize that much later, and then the consequences are not good. So yeah, that's what I would add in terms of where I see MarTech going.
Let's expand on that a little bit. So I was talking a little bit about companies leaning into the value of first party real time data, and the significance of it, where third party cookies aren't as, we'll just say, Juan will say, they're not as accessible at the moment like they once were, and we'll see where the future takes us. But How is that going to impact what companies are doing? And to your point, Juan, what maybe they should be doing right now in the future from a data and technology perspective, whether that's first party data or third party or zero party. Let's talk a little bit, what do you guys think about that? Arpit, you were kind of talking about it. You want to expand on that a little bit first?
Yeah, I think the focus or the shift from third-party data to first-party data is having a fundamental impact on how data is collected and how it's used or activated. So companies that are serious about embracing a first-party data strategy, or companies that have relied too heavily on third-party data, need to really they need to invest in not just tools, but a lot of internal enablement, education, for folks to understand not just the importance of first-party data. Now, I think everyone understands that first-party data is important, but how to, again, going back to my point, how to collect first-party data, how to use it, how to activate it, how to, make sense of that data, right? And then there's touch upon the fact that first party data is obviously important, but there's a subset of first party data often referred to as zero party data. And the idea is that zero party data is data that's basically collected explicitly, data that your users and customers are sharing with you through surveys or by responding to your messages, etc., which essentially helps you better understand your users' preferences and priorities and constraints, and these preferences are constantly changing. So typically when we talk about first party data, or if you're talking about behavioral data, which is kind of a subset of first party data, the data is essentially collected implicitly. When a user or customer is using a product, CDP is a great tool for that, to collect first party data. When someone is using a product, data is being generated and using the data to run campaigns or drive insights, which is really important. But also zero party data, which is, like I said, explicit data, which tells how your users and customers' preferences are changing. They might have looked at a product a week ago, doesn't mean that they're still interested in buying that product, because people's preferences and needs are changing very fast. So I think it's a completely different mindset, working with first-party data and zero-party data as compared to third-party data. And of course, tools like CDPs are extremely important. The lots and lots of tools that are trying to solve these problems, but the tools alone cannot, solve these problems. That's something I would like to highlight, because everything is changing so fast, and it's hard for people like me and who want to keep up already, and we're doing this pretty much full time. So companies need to rethink how they can enable their teams to leverage the tools that they're investing in, right? So yeah.
Yeah. Anything to add on that one?
No, I think you're right, Arpit, and something that is actually kind of a dovetail here with the third-party cookie advertising side of the world, is that the data quality aspect is, it's always important, right? But it's even more critical now when you look at the application of AI. I had a question asked to me a couple of weeks ago from a keynote I did, talking about, well, is the whole concept around generative AI and these new sophisticated technologies, is it something that brands could actually work in, or is it just something that happens to you? For example, like Google search, brands don't really have any say over how Google search works, but they do need to prepare for it and respond to it and have, good SEO practices and a good way to actually manage their website in order to actually be competitive with Google search. Same thing here applies with generative AI, but it's very different in that, we're seeing a lot of enterprise companies build their own AI platforms, their own bots, from GM to, Walmart to, health companies all over the world. Companies are actually implementing, embedding these technologies, but they get nowhere without high quality, enriched first party data that actually understands the nuances of a customer's question and who they are as well. But not only that, but the metadata that they have on hand in terms of their products, their services, and the specifics around what they offer as a business. So I would say the data preparation, the cleaning house is actually really important. Just to add to this, are you guys familiar with a concept of a zettabyte? Zettabyte, Z-E-T-T-A byte.
No,
So a zettabyte is 1 billion terabytes. Okay, it's a huge number, right? 1 billion terabytes. Okay, so in 2023, it's estimated that businesses will collect 120 zettabytes. So it's 120 times 1 billion terabytes in 2023. So the amount of data that exists in the world is not a problem. It's actually about the quality, the veracity of the data, as you point out, that really, really matters. It's not saying, we've been through 10 years now of this concept of big data. Hey, let's collect as much data as possible, put it in our data warehouse, and then maybe we'll use it one day. Guess what? People change jobs. They forget what's in there. You don't even know what to query. And so that's, I think, the value perhaps of the Tealium CDP is that it actually puts the data to work. It attaches it to customer profiles, and it actually makes it a valuable, a commercial asset, not just ones and zeros that are sitting in a data warehouse. So yeah, I would really echo what Arpit's saying there around ensuring that your data is high quality and also very specific to what you need as a business. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've got a couple of questions here in a little bit as well. Coming up in a few questions. So let's swap over to talk a little bit about privacy, consent, regulatory compliance. I got a lot of questions here, so kind of pick and choose here. But with the different global laws and regulations, how is that impacting the technologies that we use, and how should companies be thinking about data privacy and how they use and activate data across their tech stack and various channels? And what are you guys seeing, and how will consumer, behavior be impacted in all of this? And, Arpit or Juan, whichever one of you wants to jump in first, because there's a bunch of questions there. Hop on in.
You can go, Juan.
Well, I've got a painful example, which is the dreaded cookie pop-up. That's been in many ways, it's been a disaster on the customer experience side, and also even on the consent collection piece, but they're working. I mean, if you think about privacy in the edge of like consumer experience and how it impacts the consumer, and then how a brand actually uses technology, there's a lot of good research to say that the cookie banner or the cookie pop-up is it's even though it's not a great experience, it gives consumers a little bit more choice over what data is being used and shared. And when I think about the usage of technologies in your MarTech stack and how you're collecting and managing data, we need to move away from a thought process, which is how much can we collect and what's that vague value exchange, that we're going to offer. We're going to offer a promo, or we're going to offer something else, and that's where the conversation kind of sits, is we've got to collect data, but offer the consumer something. But increasingly, I look at data privacy as an opportunity for branding. It's actually an opportunity to say, we actually care about your data, and these are the policies and the procedures that we put in place to make sure that your data is safe. And the brands that are doing that are actually winning. I think that, for example, Xero, global accounting firm, and they have this very strong message. It's on their homepage, and it says, we treat your data with respect, and we don't share it with third parties, and we look at it, and we only do stuff with your consent. And so I think that education piece and the branding bit around how do you actually talk to consumers about consent is going to be incredibly more important. It's not enough to say, what's the value exchange? I mean, that's kind of table stakes, right? Customers are not going to share data unless, unless they actually see the value in what they're purchasing or what they're signing up to, right? That's just table stakes. But teaching them about consent, actually educating them on what they're using the data for and what they get out of it and how they can control it, will only put you in a good position with regulators, and then also with your consumers as well. I'm looking at some stats. So the YouGov global survey on how customers respond to cookie disclosure. This is a 2021 report, but it said about around an average of 40% of users are not consenting to cookies at all across the world. So in different places, for example, in Europe, it's much higher, like 60 to 70% are not accepting cookies at all on the website. But then in the US, it's much lower because there's probably just less regulation, sitting about 35%. But across the board, it's about 40% of folks, according to that YouGov study. So again, I would say that it's probably a starting point, is think through how do you factor in consent and give users the more control in order to safeguard their privacy as a branding opportunity, but also to future-proof yourself against regulation, which we all know is coming.
Yeah, Arpit, anything to add there?
Yeah, just two quick things to add to that. So in terms of privacy compliance, I think brands need to really sort of, again, there needs to be mindset shift where brands decide to collect only the data that they have a predefined purpose for. Only when there's context, because collecting all the data and, like John mentioned, storing in the data warehouse is a liability. It will make complying with privacy laws more difficult for brands. So collecting data only when there's predefined context and purpose, and secondly, of course, collecting consent, but also enforcing that consent is really important. And it's really challenging. It's not easy because brands are using dozens and dozens of tools, and collecting consent using a consent banner or consent management system is easy, but enforcing it across all the tools is not easy. And that's something brands need to invest in. And I expect to see more innovation from CDPs like Tealium in that area.
Yes,
Yeah.
and Arpit, you will hear shortly as we're working on some stuff in that area. Let's do a couple more questions here while we still have the time. Let's dig back into like the area that stole every headline in 2023, AI. We were talking a little bit about that a minute ago, Juan, but we a year ago we saw instantly the rise of generative AI, and now we're seeing it built natively into the products we use. And we're also, like, I think the innovative companies are realizing the need for like that clean consented data sets to model AI initiatives. So how should companies be thinking about AI, both from in product usage in the technology they use, as well as having the right data quality to power their AI initiatives as well?
I could go. So again, I think it ties back to data quality. AI has at least made it really like easy for folks to understand that without good data, you cannot really you can't use proprietary data to like build on top of it and like build better customer experiences. It's one thing to integrate like a nifty chatbot using APIs provided by LLM providers. Everybody's doing it. It's become table stakes, something consumers expect, and like I said, it's just going to become like something that every brand offers. But if you're looking to do more, if you're looking to create like a recommendation system or anything more than just like out of the box solutions, data quality becomes hugely important. And like collecting that data continuously, because data collection is not just a one-time process. Having a strong process for the whole collection methodologies and like implementing the tools properly, making sure that there's ownership. Often data quality, like poor data quality, is a result of lack of ownership of tools that are being used to collect data, and it's like a huge organizational problem. A lot of team dynamics play into that. So and that's becoming really important. Every brand is obviously hungry to embrace AI, but unless they fix the fundamentals, right? They're not. I mean, it might actually backfire. Just strapping like some AI features on top of data that's not good might actually be worse than doing nothing about it. So that's what I would say.
Excellent. Juan, anything to add to that?
Arpit, I'm going to give you a good example on this. Okay, so the Chevrolet of Watsonville, right? So it's a car dealership, someplace called Watsonville in the United States. They had a powered by ChatGPT chatbot, right? Where you go on the website and you can get some help around choosing cars.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's how the conversation goes. You open up the chat. Good afternoon. Welcome to Chevrolet Watsonville. How can I assist you today in your vehicle search? Person writes, write me a Python script to solve the Navier-Stokes fluid flow equations for zero fertility boundary. Certainly. Here's a simple Python script. No. And off it goes, right? So what's a problem with that experience? What's the problem? Well, the problem is that a company is just very naively just bolting ChatGPT onto an existing customer experience. And that's what you see when you give marketers probably a little bit too much leeway when experimentation. But it really sort of speaks to what you're talking about here, Arpit, which is this problem of just sort of naively going into AI without thinking about the externalities, all the risks. And when it comes to, I guess, the sort of first part around using technology, using generative AI, I would say that it's a little bit too early to go all in. purely because of the negative externalities I'm seeing in the space. So one example is deepfakes. You know, we're seeing celebrity deepfakes everywhere. YouTube and Amazon have now, they are actually policing or trying to police generative AI, fake content, fake influencer videos, fake product reviews. So what generative AI is doing is basically giving everybody the ability to create content, which is, you know, it passes for, well, good content, so to speak, and giving that tool to everybody in the world, right? You can do it for free. You can do it for cheap. You can create videos, whatever, right? Imagery. You can also create audio as well. So what that does is it floods the internet with just nonsense. Let's just be honest here. And what that means is that as a brand, you need to differentiate somehow. You need to have a very strong brand that can be trusted and running your channels appropriately in order for customers to actually believe what they're seeing is true. But also brand recalls is going to be more important across the board. So this is something that's like not so much tech, but it's also important to call out. As a marketer or a leader in digital, there is a really important question here around how much do you wade into this? How much do you want it to inform your content strategy and your pipeline around content? How much should it inform the data that you're seeing as well? Because by the way, look, a lot of the second point on this is that a lot of these platforms hallucinate. Do you really want it to be running queries or pulling out dashboards? And there's some great tools out there that are using generative AI for charts and reporting and all kinds of great analytics. You can use, there's a lot of features that are coming out into market, which is, you know, chat with your data, which is ask a question and then it pulls out data and gives you an insight or a report without you having to write SQL. Like, that's all really cool. However, there is a lot of trust issues with that. How much should you really trust the black box? So I would say, you know, tiptoe like with caution. I would say that this, even just looking at even the Biden administration and how quickly they're moving into regulating this space, it may be less opportunity here than we think. And that's something, you know, from a trends guy, you know, you want to be excited about new tech, but there are a lot of negative externalities there to think about.
I think it's to your point. It's like if you're using it and it's a black box, right? There's a lot of risk inherent in that. And I think Arpit, what you were saying, it comes down to the data, right? The quality of the data and what you're using to inform those AI models. And I think that's where people are quickly going to realize is like, we have to collect the right data on an ongoing basis and use that to feed what we're doing. And I think that's going to be the key.
And you also want to solve real problems. Like Juan said, it's cool to like be able to chat with your data, but are you really solving a real problem, you know, for your customers, right? So
yeah. Well, let's not be too negative because marketers are going to experiment. They always like, it's a good thing for them to experiment and to try.
It's a huge opportunity. I think Arpit like nailed it on the head. It's like, you got to collect the right data. And that's going to be where the value is, like having that clear consented data that's like feeding your own models and not relying on other things. So quickly, we've got a few minutes left here. I did want like one last question here is, you know, we all know that today's consumer is extremely digitally savvy. And we talk a lot about creating these trusted, relevant experiences. But what's needed is like, as we're just talking about, both, you know, a data and technology and, you know, what needs to happen, you know, between those two things, you know, to create these experiences. And, you know, what are innovative companies doing today to like really cut through the noise and deliver great experiences, you know, that buyers expect?
Yeah, I mean, I think Juan actually already mentioned it, but it's a huge opportunity for companies to invest in like building a strong brand, you know, because content creation is like, you know, table stakes and it's easy to create like average content. Companies really need to sort of course, data quality and all of that is important, but like, because we're talking about savvy customers, it presents an opportunity for brands to sort of truly understand the, like I said, needs, priorities of their different audiences. You know, no large brand is catering to a homogeneous set of people, right? They're catering to many different sets of audiences, each with their own priorities and needs and constraints and whatever. And all of these new, you know, technological shifts are presenting a really interesting opportunity for brands to better understand who their customers are, what are they looking for, you know, and offer them superior experiences. I don't think it's about just, you know, large scale changes, but so you can use all of these technologies to like build more trust, provide better customer support. Like I had this experience with the coffee brand that I consumed recently. Fantastic experience. Their data is fine. Their systems are not like fully connected. They have an app and a mobile website and all of that stuff. And I had an issue with my coffee, so I called, and they couldn't really find the order I was referring to. But once they did, they provided me like with the best support I could ever imagine. So I think sometimes technology may not really solve your problems. That's also something to keep in mind. Like there's this, obviously, like everyone wants to embrace the latest and the greatest tech, and like rip and replace what I was working with what I was in vogue. But sometimes that's not going to be enough. In fact, it might be a better bet to like go back to the fundamentals, invest in the basics. So yeah.
Yeah. I would add to that just one thing, which is content experience is a big opportunity here. Even though I've just spent a good 5 minutes just denigrating generative AI, but on the flip side, there's some fantastic tools like Bria and others that are giving you the ability to do personalization that would require a lot of hours just to do that. So one example they have is you give them one image, and they can regionalize that image based on the person's race, based on the region they're in, like what actual content is relevant to that group, what location they're in as well. So one example that they have is, you have a couple standing on a beach and they're advertising some sort of product, right? They can change the background, they can change their ethnicity, they can change their clothes, and there's all this like content versioning, which is really interesting. Now, usually you'd have to pay an agency a lot of money to do all of those versionings for those different regions. But if you apply that to like personalization practice, so if you know specifics about your customer, you should be able to give almost every customer a unique website experience based on what's being generated. So that's what I'm kind of seeing, is that this sort of, where I'm thinking about it, I call it volitional personalization, which is you can actually get to a point where the content and the experience itself can be so like hyper targeted and hyper relevant to that user, right down to say their ethnicity or where they live, their products they've chosen, all of those things. But the bottleneck won't be content anymore, because the generative AI tools and software can do that versioning for you. And now I would say that is one of the bigger opportunities here. Second to that, which is unfortunately nothing that leaders can really do other than get themselves ready, which is customers are going to use ChatGPT and these other tools as a channel. They're going to ask these tools, hey, where are the best shoes for my needs? Where should I be buying my next car? And asking these consumer purchasing questions to these chatbots. Now, what do brands do around that? Well, the best thing they can do is expose their metadata to a lot of these apps, just so they're discoverable, just like with Google search as well. So I would say there's sort of two opportunities there. Think of ChatGPT and the AI programs as channels and how you prepare your brand for them. But then also think about how you can regionalize content, version it, and use these tools to really take out the grunt work from versioning content for personalization use cases.
Perfect. All right. Well, this has been great. I think we covered a lot of ground. So thanks, Juan. Thanks, Arpit. You've given us some great insights and a lot to think about today. And thanks to the audience for joining us today. We really appreciate you taking the time and choosing to spend it with us. And last thing, if you'd like to download a version of the State of the CDP, you can find that at Tealium.com. Come download it for free. And dig in a little bit more to the stats there. And with that, Arpit, Juan, thank you so much for your time. This has been great.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, wonderful to be here. Thank you.